Oh, so in Wales, spring has officially sprung. It doesn't quite feel like it. There's still a chill and moodiness in the air that I don't really feel like I've come alive yet, and none of my plants in my garden are really springing into life. But the one thing that keeps me positive at this time of year, when it is still a little bit moody and I'm longing for those warmer times, is the smell of garlic in the air. And what I mean by that is wild garlic, aka ramps, all around us, carpeting the woodland. It's always hidden in plain sight in damp woodlands where there's streams and you can smell it. That's what gives it away. And I have so many ties to wild garlic throughout my lifetime. Our ancestors all around the world, wherever wild garlic was, would prize wild garlic for not only its medicinal uses, its ritualistic sort of spiritual uses, and also of course for its amazing flavour in cooking. So we're going to explore everything to do with this magical herb, and I hope it inspires you to go out and pick some and utilise this incredible delicacy in the woods. So if you've never picked or seen wild garlic before, obviously the first telltale sign is the smell when you walk through the woodlands, so you know it's about. But the leaves are sort of pointy, long, oval shaped. You can just tear one and it's pungent like garlic. Later on in the season, the leaves are obviously a lot longer and it's easy to identify because they have the most beautiful white flower that actually is also edible, and it has a sweeter garlicky taste, and it's the perfect garnish. Right now, because we're so early in the season, these leaves are small, but I can see a few of the buds popping up, and these are great eaten like this. In some cultures, wild garlic was believed to possess protective qualities that would ward off any evil spirits and negative energies. It was often hung in homes to protect against supernatural harm. That is quite the harvest. It does take a little time picking each leaf individually, but look at that. And there's no fear here about taking too much because there's just tons of it. I think having just harvested this beautiful wild garlic in the woodland, it's only right that I actually cook it outside. I think a hearty, warming soup with the wild garlic will be absolutely beautiful. But to take it to the next level a little bit, I'm actually going to use some of this wild garlic also to make scones or dumplings on top of the stew, and we'll use the hot coals to actually bake them. That's going to be beautiful and an amazing topping. First off though, we'll have to make a real hearty base, something that's going to add real richness and depth to the stew. I'm going to chop up some homegrown leek and carrot and celeriac. That's the last of the sort of winter veg that I've got, and it'll be perfect in this stew.
So for the base of your stew, feel free to use whatever vegetables you like. My celeriac, aka celery root, will act similarly to celery, which adds a surprising depth to sauces and stews. It's a super underappreciated vegetable in my opinion, and one of my favourites. I'm just chopping everything roughly, and then I'll saute in a little olive oil.
Oh, we got to turn up the heat. Let's get this on the flame.
Talking of depth and richness, my next ingredient will add exactly that, porcini mushrooms, which I just rehydrate in a little boiling water. Then some herbs from my garden.
think I'm gonna have to turn the heat down now. Oh, you just got to play this fire like a piano in terms of heat. 1 minute it's too hot, 1 minute it's too cold, but you just got to move it around. Just added some aromatic thyme from the garden and bay leaf. And it's just important to not add the liquids too soon when cooking any cuisine really, particularly if you're keeping it meat free, because all of that flavor and that time that you invest in caramelization of the celeriac, the carrot, the leek, and those herbs is just going to make it even more bold at the end. Now, I also like to add even more aromatics into my stews. It's a little bit different, but I'm going to add some fennel seed at this point and also some cumin, and they will slowly roast in the bottom of that pan. Beautiful.
Next, a couple of spices, celery salt and ground white pepper. To help create a luxurious stew consistency, at this point I stir through a couple tablespoons of flour and then cook the mix out for 2 to 3 minutes. And then to deglaze the pan, in goes my rehydrated mushrooms along with the water. Let that bubble away for a bit, then I stir through some homemade miso paste, and this is when it smells sensational.
Hello, Betty. Hello. Oh.
Then a splash of water to turn it into a stew, and I'll add a bit more substance.
Obviously we're going to be making the dumplings, but a few baby potatoes just chopped into it would be good. Alright, so these dumplings, more of a British dumpling. Recently we were in Jamaica and we made spinners. My friend Chef Vita and I, absolutely amazing cooking down by the river, and I urge you to go and watch that series that we made. But these dumplings, very simple as well.
Firstly, I cube some cold plant butter and stir it through some self-raising flour. Then rub it together to create a breadcrumb-like consistency, making sure the butter is distributed evenly. And now for some flavour. I add a generous sprinkle of nutritional yeast, which has a nutty, cheesy flavour, believe it or not. Then some chia seeds, which help bind everything together.
So I'm just going to chop through my wild garlic. But as I'm here in the woodland, whenever I come out and do filming outside, and especially in the woodland, I feel at peace and calm. It's not easy making these videos, but it's such a joy when we're out in the woodland, and I hope that these videos actually inspire you just to sort of reconnect with nature yourself, especially if you live in the city. I've lived in cities all my life until I moved to the country, and I can now see the importance so much more of being outside and reconnecting with the country and nature. After all, you know, we used to live in woodlands and there's so much distraction and so many things nowadays and so much to deal with that it's important that we reconnect and plug ourselves into the earth. Not to get too woo-woo, but all our shoes are, you know, they're rubber soled, so we're not connected. I don't connect to the earth enough, especially when I'm in the winter time. It's too cold to get my bare feet out. But you know how good you feel after a day at the beach on holiday? You could feel like that every day, and that's because you're on holiday on the beach, your feet are touching the earth. Now I'll also add some parsley as well. Just a little bit chopped fine. So we'll add a pinch of salt and give it a good stir, plus a touch of water just to bring everything together. This looks like something from the olden days. So it may look like there's a lot of wild garlic, but that's the point, right? Because this is a wild garlic celebration. And this will break down as I'm kneading it. Just a slight knead. We don't want these to be tough, we want them to be light. And just work this a little bit.
Roll the dough into a sausage and cut it into around 6 pieces.
So just little rounds. These dumplings should rise up and go light and fluffy with that raising agent that's already in the flour. If you don't have self-raising flour, you can just use plain flour or all-purpose flour and just add a touch of bicarbonate of soda or baking powder. Full written recipe is always on the website. It's actually they call it the hungry gap at this time of year, which is when, you know, the season is just about to start and the winter veg is pretty much done. But one thing that is in is purple sprout and broccoli. So I've got a nice bunch here. And also you can use like the kale florets too, which are just like broccoli. But purple sprout and broccoli is such a beautiful colour. And this stew, it needs it now. This is going to add a nice addition. So we're going to get this in and the wild garlic before we put the dumplings on top. Loads of this wild garlic, because this just wilts down like spinach does.
When the stew is thickened, it's time for me to create my oven. I place my pot onto the hot coals and the dumplings delicately go on top of the stew.
It wasn't looking very sophisticated or exciting until I put those dumplings on. That is beautiful. I love the wild garlic running through them. So the lid goes on top of here now, and then I'll load coals on top of that lid so that the dumplings crispen up over the top, but they're also almost poached as well in the stew beneath. If you're cooking this at home in a conventional oven, just do the exact same process, but put the casserole or the stew with the dumplings on top into your oven, set it around 180 degrees for about 35 minutes or so. It's been about 25-30 minutes. It's always a surprise because obviously if you're cooking this conventionally, you can see how brown and how sort of caramelized the dumplings are, but I have no clue. I'm hoping they're going to be not burnt and just lightly toasted on top. Let's see. Oh, I'm excited for this. Here it goes. Oh, yes, look at that. We have some colour on top. Oh, and they've risen so much. Oh my gosh, that smells so good. Something that I didn't expect to happen is any bits of wild garlic that were floating on top have sort of gone a little crispy and caramelized, because it's real, like it smells like a caramelized garlic onion smell. All right, let's dig in. This is so hearty and warming. Bit of parsley on top. All right, let's dig in. Oh, did you hear that crunch? Here it goes, wild garlic dumpling, poached and cooked in the stew almost, and baked in the stew I should say. Thank you heavenly earth. Mmm. Oh, that is, just the word savoury springs to mind. Really rich, savoury goodness. The stew isn't the most vibrant of stews I've ever made, if I must admit. What would be nice, because I did want this to be quite a clear broth, but with the choice of veg I use, especially adding things like purple carrot, it sort of dyes the stew a little bit. So what you can do is just add a little Marmite or soy sauce, and it'll go a rich dark brown colour. But flavour wise, humble, hearty, end of winter, early spring food for sure. Absolutely delicious. This kind of food that my dad would say would put meat on my bones and hairs on my chest.